Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. And here we are with Fantasy Football with Ryan Skolrud, episode number 8. And Ryan, glad to have you back on for our good allotment of close to about an hour.
Yeah, it's nice to be back on the show with you.
The nice part about these shows, we're really not pressured into time. We say what we got to say, get it out there, and just take care of business. So, with that said, okay, let's start off with Kareem Hunt. Will Kareem Hunt eat into Nick Chubb's workload?
Well, here's the thing. I've been saying since the beginning, even in the preseason, that once Kareem Hunt comes back, he is going to have not taken any meaningful snaps in a year. That I don't think that he is going to take a whole lot of work from Nick Chubb. Now we've got, Freddie Kitchens saying, well, he is definitely going to have a role. I think, honestly, the role for the most part from Kareem Hunt is going to be, at least to start out, is going to be basically taking over Dontrell Hilliard's position as kind of that pass-catching back that got about 40% of the snaps. I really don't think that it is in the Browns' best interest to keep Nick Chubb off the field. He has been basically practically their only bright spot on their offense, and has been one of the few things actually keeping them afloat in games. I personally, in terms of fantasy purposes, have Kareem Hunt as no more than a flex play. Nick Chubb has been about a top 5 or 6 running back so far in the year. I think he may move down to a top 10, kind of that 9 or 10 area. I still think he's a top running back in this league for the fantasy season for the rest of the year. But as with what Freddie Kitchens has said so far, it looks like Kareem Hunt may actually dig into his workload a little bit. But kind of to joke and kind of play off that, Freddie Kitchens also said the Browns were going to be good this year. So,
go figure. Yeah, all right, Freddie. One and done. See you later when it comes to Black Monday. So, meanwhile, a guy that is out this week, you say, is Evan Engram. Tough night on Monday night.
Yeah, so Evan Engram has already been ruled out for, I believe it's the Sunday Night Football game, from the Monday Night Football game. They're playing the Jets this week. He has already been ruled out, which means that Ellison will be the starting tight end for the Giants. Ingram is right now dealing with what do they call a mid-foot sprain, I believe is what it is. It's not a Liz Frank injury like Cam Newton's been dealing with. This is a small sprain that it's just they feel it's better for them to just give him the week off. So Rhett Ellison I think can be a fantasy fill-in at tight end on a position that's been just weak all around. It is every year. Unless you have one of the studs, you're kind of fiddling around to figure out who's going to play, who's going to be the top guy or the top streaming option each week. So Rhett Ellison, I think, can fill the position and has done an okay job in Ingram's absence so far this year. Long term, especially for those who play Dynasty or dealing with wanting Ingram healthy for a playoff run in the fantasy playoffs. This does put a little bit of damper on Ingram simply because he's been injured so much over the last couple of years. It's just there always seems to be something that he is dealing with, and so for right now I'm not worried yet, but I think that he is still. I still think that it's something to keep an eye on. I've got him on one team as my tight end on one team, but I also have Hunter Henry on that team, so it's easy for me to be able to switch back and forth if I need to.
Okay. All right. Well, Jacoby Brissett looks like he could play this week. Didn't look that way when he went down.
Yeah, he's saying that he's feeling a lot better. That his foot is feeling a lot. That his I believe it was his foot or ankle, I believe, was feeling a lot better. That he was able to, it was his MCL. He was able to work a little bit. Did a limited practice, I believe, today, which is good going forward for this next week. Even if he doesn't play, I think that Brian Hoyer can fill in the position nicely enough. So for those who have Jacoby Brissett as their starting quarterback, to have someone like a Brian Hoyer to fill in, is still going to be good enough to get a win for the Colts, and two, to still provide some fantasy relevance for those who got Zach Pascal this week on waivers. He is filled in nicely. You've got Paris Campbell and T.Y. Hilton are both out with injury right now, so Pascal should get plenty of work this week, especially against an absolutely atrocious Miami secondary.
Okay. A.J. Green, you say possibly going to be back this week?
So actually, since I sent you that note, it has actually been said that he is going to play. The head coach for the Bengals has made the announcement that Green is going to play this week. Now, he doesn't have his favorite quarterback in Andy Dalton throwing to him this week. It's going to be Ryan Finley. They announced that that change was going to happen 2 weeks ago after Dalton's atrocious start right before going to the bye week. They wanted to give Finley a couple weeks to really work in the system with the starters and everything over the bye week. So Finley is going to start. He is going to be the one throwing the ball. I think that he could still provide a little bit of fantasy relevance and help Green to be fantasy relevant. This really cuts down on like Auden Tate and Erickson, those guys that were having kind of mini breakouts and being streamable wide receivers during bye weeks. This basically negates all of their value at this point with Finley, and it's basically going to come down to Green and Boyd are the only wide receivers that are going to have any fantasy relevance. As far as Green goes, I wouldn't rate him any more than a wide receiver 3, just because we don't know how he's going to be used, how Finley is going, what kind of rapport he can have with Finley yet as a quarterback. So for me, it's still I'm still cautious with AJ Green. I wouldn't start him unless there's 6 teams on bye this week. So if you have no other choice, I would not expect any more than wide receiver 3 numbers.
Well, not only that, when you bring a guy like him who's been out for a long time, you don't know what the rusty effect is going to be to begin with, let alone a new quarterback. So I could definitely see your point there.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know what you got coming back. The guy's been out for a while. So all right, I've got a question for you. What are your thoughts about Emmanuel Sanders this week? Has he grasped the San Francisco 49ers offense yet?
Yeah, I think he's got it well enough that he should be okay for this weekend. It's I don't like saying that, but considering what the Seattle defense gave up to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and company, Sanders should be in for a pretty decent week. He should provide wide receiver 2 numbers easily in Monday Night Football against the Seahawks. The Seahawks secondary has really been struggling. And really what it comes down to is the reason that the secondary has been struggling is because the front 4 has not been able to get any pressure whatsoever on quarterbacks. The additions of Ziggy Ansah and company have not been able. They just haven't been able to get to the quarterback. And so for that, it's what really helped the Legion of Boom 5 and 6 years ago was the fact that they had such a phenomenal pass rush in Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill. It allowed the defensive secondary to not have to cover for 6-7 seconds and get beat all the time, and really key in on guys. That's not the case right now. The Seahawks have not been able to get a pass rush. And so it's made it very difficult for them to be able to cover guys and get stops, on long third downs and such, because the defensive line has not been able to get to the quarterback. So because of that, I can see Garoppolo getting a fair amount of time and being able to hit Sanders for some deep routes and some crossing routes and stuff. and that. So,
what a good find for the 49ers to get here from Denver, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Denver was selling at this point, and for the most part, the pass offense for the 49ers was practically non-existent. I mean, even Kittle had been struggling a lot at the beginning of the year. And it had been the run game. The run game and the defense was really what had been keeping everything going for the 49ers and giving them the undefeated record that they have so far. Adding Sanders has allowed Kittle to get loose more because defenses now have to game plan for two solid receivers as well as still try to stop the run. So,
all right, well, let's go to one of our favorite parts of the show, and we're going to pick them all. How's that sound? Start off tomorrow night. Los Angeles Chargers, once upon a time known as the San Diego Chargers, taking on the Oakland Raiders, who will be the Las Vegas Raiders. That will next year at this time it'll be Las Vegas against Los Angeles. So, who do you got?
Well, in terms of fantasy, I think that we talked yesterday about how Derek Carr's been playing pretty well so far this season. That being said, the Chargers have been playing very tough against defenses or against quarterbacks. They held Aaron Rodgers and the running backs really to almost nothing this last week. I think that if the Chargers defense can travel well to Oakland, I think that Carr could struggle a little bit. I still think that Josh Jacobs is in for a solid game. The Chargers give up a lot of points to running backs, but for the most part, they've been able to stop up quarterbacks and wide receivers. So Carr and Tyrell Williams could be in for difficult games. Jacobs should be the focus of the offense, really, for the Raiders. And if that's the case, he should be in for a really good game. As far as the Chargers go, Rivers should see a little bit of a bounce back this week. I know that he played pretty well last week, but still finished with no touchdowns, no interceptions, threw for 295 yards. Basically, everything went through the kicker and Melvin Gordon really was what did it for the Chargers last week. But the Raiders give up the second most amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks, the second most to wide receivers, and the third most to tight ends. So really, Rivers should have his way using Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Hunter Henry to really take over this Raiders defense. And I think that the Chargers come out with a win in this one. We'll say 21-17.
All right, well, what do you think about Melvin Gordon? Do you think he gets in groove and picks up where he left off last week now that he's finally getting in game shape?
I think it's possible. What concerns me is that the Chargers' offensive line still has struggled. The Green Bay Packers, for the most part, have struggled all year in stopping the run, and so that's part of what led to Melvin Gordon's solid week last week. The Raiders are much better stopping the run than the Packers are. So I think Gordon could still be okay, but the Raiders over the last 4 weeks have given up, or on average, keep running backs about a point under their projections. So this could be a little bit of a down week for Gordon.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and give the Raiders 23-17. Being at home, after all, they don't have many more of these Oakland games left, but they go out there and to me it works a lot better that way. I just like the Raiders for some crazy reason. I don't know why. All right, let's go on to a game I have a vested interest in: the Lions and the Bears for the 9 billionth time.
All right, so as far as the Lions and the Bears go, from the fantasy perspective, this should be a solid game for the Bears offense. Should be. The Lions give up and bleed points everywhere, fantasy points everywhere. They allow quarterbacks to, over the last 4 to 5 weeks, they've allowed quarterbacks to score about 5 points over their projection. They've allowed running backs to score about 5 points over their projections. Wide receivers about 5 points over. I mean, they're just bleeding points everywhere, the Lions are. The Bears defense still is doing very good against wide receivers and quarterbacks, but allow a lot of points to running backs. So in this one, I think as far as fantasy goes, I still don't trust Mitch Trubisky. I still want him nowhere near my lineups in terms of fantasy. If you have a